Spring break crowds at Disneyland? No problem. Today we are talking about the 5 insider tips that will make your spring break visit amazing.
You're listening to Castle Talk Radio. We're live on the airwaves with Becca and Jessica. Now let's jump into this week's episode.
Becca has been going to Disneyland for spring break for 14 years. While some people may avoid it as a popular time to go, Becca has embraced it and figured out the strategies and tips to make you say, the crowds never bothered me anyway. Spring break at Disneyland just isn't a week or two. I think it's a common misconception. So Becca, let's address that first. When is spring break at Disneyland?
Okay, Jessica, you got it exactly right. Spring breaks vary around the entire country, and so we can actually find that spring break season at Disneyland is all of March and April, but especially mid-March to a full week after Easter. Since Easter changes every year, that is variable as, for the length. The busiest weeks do tend to be the week before Easter and the week after Easter because a lot of school districts base their spring breaks on when Easter is. So that is the 2 busiest weeks almost every year. And that's actually when our magic key holders, I should say, will find themselves blocked as one of those weeks because of the crowd expectations.
Okay, right. And one thing we've noticed year after year is that on our pages and in our planning groups, we get a lot of people asking when are all the Southern California spring breaks are, and when is LAUSD spring break? And I know this question can get really repetitive and it kind of bothers you.
Yeah, it does. And let me tell you why. Those are not the spring breaks you should be worried about. Okay, so Jessica, what do most families do on spring break?
We like to go on vacation.
Right. So Southern California families are the same. They're traveling away from Southern California. The ones that tend to affect spring break crowds more are Northern California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah, Arizona. Those surrounding states are along the West Coast and just in from the West Coast. Those are the people that tend to head to Disneyland. There could be some Southern California families that is their spring break, but it's more the exception than the rule. Personally, I don't think we should ever worry about when breaks are for different schools. I think we should always travel when it's best for our family's calendar. And if you use our tips and strategies that we give you all the time, but especially the ones today, you'll have an amusing visit.
I totally agree. And that leads us perfectly into your tips for conquering spring break crowds. You've been doing spring break for a very long time, and your family always has a great time. So let's talk about the tips for beating the crowds and even joining the crowds, making the most of the vacation during spring break. So let's first talk about what days to go and what parks to do on each day. Like, is there any strategy involved in that?
Yeah, so this is where it gets a little weird, is that a lot of times over spring break, the spring break season, I should say, the weekends tend to be less busy. And that's because a majority of Magic Keys are blocked out, so even the locals aren't going on the weekends. And then most people, you get a 1-week spring break, so you spend your weekends traveling, right? You're either coming to or going from. And so a lot of times those people visit Monday through Friday. So a lot of times Saturdays and Sundays tend to be less busy over the spring break season. Now, as for what part to do what day, I always say do what works for your family, but I tend to try and start at the opposite park as early entry, or there's this big exception because we have, depending on when your spring break is, if the Star Wars nights are happening, I will start at the park that Star Wars night is going on. And even if I have a single park per day and I can't park hop, I will go to that park on the Star Wars night at Disneyland because of the fact that most people choose to go to California Adventure instead. And so you can get a lot done. Of course, I'm getting those tickets for those days through Getaway Today at getawaytoday.com/castle talk, because that's where you can get the best deals on Disneyland tickets. And when I'm buying those tickets, I like to get a 3 or 4 day and then also have a couple days off while I'm there just to go do other things. It's spring break, go to the beach, go to one of the other theme parks in the area. So that gives you a rest. And I think that rest is important because when you're in the crowds every day, sometimes you just need to get away from those people so that you can tolerate the crowds again. So I know the longer I'm in a crowded theme park, the less tolerable I am to others.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's definitely times of the day where there are lower crowds. And when you have more days at the theme park, you can also spend less time in the park as well. Like, say we're only going to go for a few hours today. So, say you have a 5-day ticket, because Getaway Today does have that 5th day free. So, it's like you pay for 4 days and you get 5 days, which is perfect for spring break. So, I'm not going to spend like 12 hours in the parks for 5 days in a row with 3 kids, because we're just not that fun. We want to go certain times of the day when there's low crowds. What is the best times for us to spend in the parks?
Okay, so you and I talk about all the time, and the first one is rope drop. That's going to be the absolute best time. You want to be in the park before the official park opening. And so when I stay at a Harbor Boulevard hotel that's within walking distance, I usually leave my hotel at 7:30 a.m. for an 8 a.m. opening. And if you're wondering what hotels those are that have that great location, we did just cover this recently for those north of the crosswalk, and then eventually we'll cover the other ones. But um, you want to leave and you want to be there in the parks up to where the ropes are. So what it is that they let you in the parks all the way down to the end of Main Street, basically, and then they have ropes. And you want to be there when those ropes open. I am not someone that says you have to be the very first person in, first at rope drops. So that's why I'm not telling you to be at the park an hour and a half before opening like some people do. I just want you in the parks by that time, and then you'll get those low crowds. And those low crowds usually last about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And so you'll want to use some of our rope drop strategies. I'll link those down in the show notes for you guys that help you get the most out of those hours. Then, you know what? If you've got a 5-day ticket, you can sleep in 1 or 2 of those days, but start those first couple of days rope dropping when you have the energy, and at least rope drop Disneyland. If you're like, I can only rope drop one day, make it a Disneyland day, because um, you can get a lot more done over at Disneyland because the rides are closer together. Now, this is my strategy with that. I'm trying to avoid crowds. So I usually stay until lunch, and we either eat lunch in the park or we leave and get lunch, whether it's at our hotel or a restaurant outside of the parks. And then we don't come back until around dinner time or just after dinner. And that is where people that have young kids, they're starting to leave because their kids are getting cranky. But you've gone, you've taken naps, or you've spent some time at the pool relaxing, or maybe both, and you're coming back and you're enjoying those evening hours. A lot of times those evening hours are cooler because we do tend to get some pretty warm temps over spring break, but they're also less crowded. And if fireworks and other things are going that day, you're going to have people going and sitting out and waiting for those, which makes the lines for rides smaller again. So lots of benefits to that. And you can stay till park close if you want. Usually during spring break, that's midnight, which is crazy to me, but you can stay that long if you want, but definitely stay as late as you can. I know Jessica and I are not like known for closing down the park. Jessica, I know you're getting better, but um, we're much more the morning people. So I definitely would take advantage of that. Now, what you're doing though, we're going to have to move into our next tip with this, I think, is because while you're doing that and you're back at the hotel or whatever, you're going to be still grabbing lightning lanes. So let's move on to that one. What's my next
Yeah. So,
thing?
Becca, you prepared a couple notes for me coming into this, and we know that lightning lanes are a must, but you promised me that you were going to share, on top of lightning lanes, one insider tip that everyone really needs to know, and I need to know what it is. So tell us about lightning lanes. Tell us about the tip.
Okay, so during spring break, this is not the time to skip getting the lightning lane multi-pass. Now, if you want to get the best price on it, you're going to pre-purchase it with your tickets through Getaway Today. And you can, again, do that at getawaytoday.com/Castle Talk, and you'll have the best discounts there. Plus, you'll lock in that rate. If you purchase it day of, let's say you're like, I just can't afford it every day. I really do need to purchase it day of, so I'm only buying it for 1 or 2 days. You're going to pay dynamic pricing. And during spring break, we haven't had spring break yet since the last increase, but over winter break, we did see that up to close to $40 per day. So it will probably be around the same, I would imagine, over spring break. So,
Hurt.
yeah, it does hurt. So, but I understand that, sometimes that's still better than if you have a 5-day ticket and you really can't just do all 5 days. Now, there's actually 2 insider tips. One, you and I share a lot, and that is you're rope dropping. You're not using the lightning lane during rope drop, right? But you are booking lightning lanes for rides that are down. And we actually have one episode that we recently did about thrill rides that we talk about this. But we also have our insider tips episode, which I will link that one because it actually has visuals of doing this in the app. What happens when you book a lightning lane for a ride that's down and hopefully with a quick return time is if the ride is still down when your time comes up, you get what's called a multi-experience lightning lane. And that is available to use on multiple rides, and it's good for the entire day. So you can build these up while you're doing everything else in those rope drop hours and have those for late the evening when you come back, because the lines, all those times might be gone by then. So that's the first one. But the second one is that while you're back at your hotel, you are still booking lightning lanes for the rest of the day, and you can stack those up. You won't be able to book them again. You have the time frame you have to wait, which is, I can never remember, 90 or 120 minutes or whatever. But you can build them up. So you're going to want to choose ones that have the best way to do it is like you have these 5 different ones maybe that you're trying to pick from. Pick the one that's getting closest, the latest return time. Because if you wait 2 hours to pick that one, it's probably going to be gone, right? So you're going to want to kind of book them the opposite way of what you would normally do. You want to book the farthest away and work your way down while you're back at your hotel so that you can pile those up and have a bunch of them when you come back. Do you ever do this, Jessica?
Yeah. So, like, for example, we always want to do Space Mountain as like a last ride. So, and that one tends to get out later and later. So we'll be looking and say, oh my gosh, Space Mountain's already at 11 p.m. And we better book that one now because we don't want to go at 11:45. So book that one at 11. And then we'll be looking at some other ones like, oh, Big Thunder still has them for 9:30. So we know we can wait on that one a little bit. Like fill in those time slots later.
Yeah, it's a great strategy to make sure you have those lightning lanes for later in the day when things are running out of lightning lane return times.
So we talked about, you mentioned a little bit about like eating lunch in the parks and then heading back, or like coming back when it's time for dinner. I have to tell you one of the things that I hate the most is when I see guests sitting and eating their food on the ground. And if you love sitting and eating your food on the ground, that is totally fine. You can bring food and drinks into Disneyland, but you don't have to sit on the ground. And if you bought food, you also don't have to sit on the ground. There's tons of places to sit. You just have to know how to find them and where to find them. So where are we eating? And if we brought in food, where are we finding tables? Especially on a packed day. Like we need to find seats. And there's plenty of them. You just sometimes have to look around the corner. But tell me where are
Yeah.
your favorites.
Okay. Well, the first thing is that we're not going to go during attack time, like for lunch. So this is the first tip is to eat at a weird hour for your meals, right? And so you're having your lunch at 11 a.m. rather than at noon or 1, or you're going to eat at 2 or 3 and have a midday meal and then not have dinner or whatever. You're going to do it on an off time. You're also going to mobile order so you don't have to stand in those lines. And best yet is if you mobile order, you have a group and you can hold that table that you find while one person goes to get the food or whatever, right? These are things that you can do. But as far as if it is full, we've all done that awkward thing where we kind of stand around trying to figure out who's going to be done eating and who's cleaning up and that kind of thing. And then you watch for other people that are trying to get a spot as well. We don't want to have to do that. So there are lots of hidden areas that have extra seating. And one thing people don't know is you don't have to purchase food at that quick service restaurant to utilize the tables. Now, the ones that require reservations is a different story. Those you do have to have a reservation and go there for it. But like I'm thinking of the golden, not the, even the golden horseshoe you can walk into and use, and that's a really great hidden spot because it has lots of seating upstairs and downstairs. Stage door cafe area. You can also go to, there's my hidden little spot across from the exit to Big Thunder that goes up. It looks like, I think it calls it a wharf or whatever, or a pier or something to load on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you go up this little ramp or stairs and there's some seating there. There's also tables on Tom Sawyer's Island. There's lots of grass. It's turf, that grass in Toontown. You can go up and sit in and have your meal there. So there's lots of hidden areas that you can find. So while you're going through the park, because these can move, sometimes they'll move where these places are, just kind of watch and be like, oh, I could probably sit there. But the biggest tip though is to eat a little bit off of the main food time. So noon to 2, that's a popular lunch time, right? And 4:30 to about 7, that's really popular for dinner. So if you can eat at times other than that, if you're going to eat in the parks, that will help you out.
I love it. Those are great tips. Going into spring break, we're planning for a great time. We're planning for a great family vacation, and we are all going to be happy, and we're not going to overspend, and everyone is just going to be full of pixie dust, and it's going to be the best time ever, right?
Okay. Now,
And you better be happy, Becca. You better be.
because we paid a lot of money for this vacation. You better be
right back to
happy.
the hotel if you're not happy.
So we want everyone to have a great vacation, but part of making sure you have a great vacation is setting realistic expectations. Because if you have these high hopes that you're going to walk onto every single ride or maybe max 10 minutes, you're not going to have a great trip because you're setting yourself up for failure. So I always say go into it imagining it's going to be crazy busy and that you're probably going to wait an hour on each ride, which you won't on each ride. There might be a couple that has that long wait. But if you set that expectation like that, it's going to help. And don't let that, but when you sound it like that, then you're like, well, then it doesn't even sound fun. Mm-hmm. So how I balance that is I have everyone pick 3 things for each day. So it depends on your party size. So we're a family of 5. So for each day, my kids get to pick one ride that's their must do, one other thing that they must do, whether that's a show or, entertainment or whatever, meeting a character. And then everyone gets to pick one snack or food that they want to do each day. And then we focus on that. And those are the things we focus on making sure we fit into our day. It makes it so at least everyone's getting to do something they want to do. And you have realistic expectations. Because if you set this goal that we're going to do everything in one day, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. But if you say, hey, we're doing these for my family, these 5 rides today. And then when we hit 5 rides within an hour in the morning because we rope drop, we're feeling pretty darn good about our day at that point because we're like, hey, we've already done 5 rides. Yeah, we still have a couple of our must-dos to get to, but we've done over and above what we had expected to do today. So it helps you have a better day. And then just pack your patience. Like, there's going to be people, and also you're going to see kids having like meltdowns and even adults having meltdowns. So just pack some patience and try to focus on what you can control.
Definitely. I think one of my mottos for going into the parks as well is plans change. And I'm telling that to myself and to the kids and whoever I'm with all the time because plans change. Because you may be planning to go on Jungle Cruise next and you get there and it's just gone down. Or something's happened and you say, we're going to do this and this next. And you're thinking 2 steps ahead, but then you have to readjust real quickly as like a group leader or whoever's kind of paving the way, and just kind of set that expectation for everyone else. Like, we're going to plan for this, but we might have to make some adjustments on the way and we're still going to have a great time. And that's no problem because we're ready for it.
Yeah, exactly. So, Jessica, I don't think it's worth skipping spring break. I think it's one of the best times to go weather-wise. I also think sometimes you've gone through January that always feels like it's years long, and February, and you just need that vacation in that sunny Southern California experience to lift your spirits. And we love that. And of course, I do want to mention that depending on when your spring break is, there's lots of deals through our partners at Getaway Today. Southern California residents do have a special deal for the spring. And of course, like you mentioned, 5th day free. And they also have free hotel nights. There's so many deals. There's a Universal deal that's coming up. I mean, so much that you can save on, and you always get the best rates through our partners at Getaway Today. And you can get those deals at getawaytoday.com/Castle Talk, or you can call them at 855-GETAWAY, and just make sure to say that you want Castle Talk Radio special prices to lock in that deal. And we will see you guys for spring break at Disneyland.